September last year. The strongest push in price increases came from rice, which recorded a double-digit inflation of nearly 18%. That's the highest recorded level since rice inflation clocked in at over 22% in May 2009. All despite the government earlier implementing a price ceiling to curb the soaring costs of rice. National statistician Dennis Mapa mentioned mixed compliance with the said price cap, but says a finding of casualty is still premature.
Tinignan namin yung ating mga presyo sa ating mga sample outlets at mix ang ating nakikita. Marami kasi tayong mga varieties, regular milled and wheel milled na kinukuha at pinakuha ko sa ating field offices. Yung number of prices collected for regular milled rice, 2,601. Ganong karami yung aming kinukuha ng mga items, no? For regular meal, 2,601. At ang nakita namin, only 640 of these prices ay nagfo-fall doon sa price cap na 41 or below. Para naman doon sa wheel-milled rice, ang total number of varieties ang aming tinatrack ay 3,498. At only 687 or mga 20% ay nag-fall doon sa price cap. Hindi natin masasabi yung causality kung mayroon talagang effect kung wala yung price cap. For example, I suppose this is a research question that researchers would study based on the data that we are collecting.
Now, despite the lifting of the government-mandated price cap, some retailers decide keeping prices steady. In a public market in Mandaluyong, local rice is selling for 50 pesos to 56 pesos per kilo. Some varieties of well-milled rice are still priced at 45 pesos per kilo, while a kilo of regular milled rice is at 41 pesos. Finally, imported rice varieties like Jasmine, Dinorado, and Coco Pandan are selling for 57 to 58 pesos a kilo. At least 6 manufacturers of basic necessities and prime commodities have withdrawn requests for price increases. Trade Secretary Alfredo Pascual says the government and manufacturers have reached a consensus to hold off price hikes until the end of the year in a dialogue. Companies that pulled out their requests were involved in manufacturing of bottled water, candles, condiments, bread, and toilet soap. During the same dialogue, manufacturers also raised issues like the imposition of pass-through fees, as well as lack of local supply of raw materials. Pascual, however, assured that the government would continue to find ways to address the rising costs of their production. Here to help us unpack that recent inflation data for the month of September, we have with us on the show Paolo Rivera, President and Chief Economist of Oikonomia Advisory and Research. Good morning, sir. Thank you very much for joining us on One News.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Good morning.
Yes, okay, sir, let's get right to it. Rice inflation at its highest since 2009. So do you think we have the price cap, that the price cap was ineffective, or was it even a contributory factor?
Well, conceptually speaking, the fact that the price ceiling for rice has been set below what it should have been sold, it actually created more of a shortage because the suppliers of rice would not anymore be willing to sell more of their products because it's technically selling at a loss.
Okay.
So it actually contributed to the shortage.
Okay. So you're saying, sir, even if there were subsidies in place, selling it at a loss, it was still being sold at a loss for most of them?
For most of the rice suppliers, particularly those in far-flung areas.
Okay. And the next question is, headline inflation climbed to 6.1% from at least the 5.3 in August. Now, was this expected?
Well, among the poll, among economists, we were able to forecast the inflation for this month quite relatively lower. And for me, this is quite surprising because the 6.1 could have been mitigated had there been enough policies implemented for the past month.
And are you expecting inflation to remain elevated for the rest of the year? And when are you expecting inflation to stabilize?
Well, historically speaking, the Philippines has been experiencing relatively high inflation in the latter part of the year because of an increased demand given that holiday season.
Yes.
So we're expecting inflation to increase in the succeeding months due to demand, but it is still reinforced by supply side constraints. So we're seeing now a dynamic, no, the combination of demand side and supply side factors contributing to inflation.
You said it's expected to increase. So what then is your projection for the full year of 2024? And is the 2 to 4% target range of the Bangko Sentral still possible to achieve?
Well, given the trend that's going on right now, inflation might play around the upper 5% and lower 6% band, which would be quite challenging to reach the lower target set by the BSP for the whole year. And again, this is driven by both demand and supply now that the holiday season is kicking in.
And I'm sure you've seen most of the surveys, and President Marcos got a double-digit drop in his approval ratings, primarily attributed to inflation. Now, what else can the administration do at this point to address inflation concerns?
Well, the administration will be able to help in having or in arresting or mitigating inflation by also contributing to a reduced demand, perhaps. And this controlling of inflation can also be managed through the help of the monetary authority through certain monetary policies that would regulate demand. But again, hiking rates are only effective in controlling demand. But we are seeing right now that part of the problem of inflation is coming from supply.
Okay. And growth targets at 6 to 7%. Some lenders and credit rates have trimmed their own forecasts below that target. Now, how about you, sir? What's your growth outlook for the full year of 2023?
Well, growth rate for the full year of 2023 would remain to be positive. No, I'm expecting it to be at around 5% because the holiday season is contributing more to demand, which would help GDP grow. And if government could actually contribute in creating productive spending for the economy, then we would be able to have a more optimistic growth rate for 2023.
Well, it's given that this coming holiday season will, of course, increase the flow of money. What are the risks, economic risks, to watch out for?
Well, economic risks in the flow of money, especially that it's holiday, the remittances are also increasing. Again, historical data is showing that the rise in demand, the continuous rise in demand would impact inflation. It would prompt the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas to do monetary tightening that would to allow our inflation to be regulated so that it would also be helpful for our fellow Filipinos in managing their demand.
Thank you very much for your insights. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for now. Thank you for joining us, Paolo Rivera.
Thank you very much and good morning again.
Yes, and President and Chief Economist of Oikonomia Advisory and Research. Good morning, sir. We'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News. You're still watching One News Now. I'm Diego Castro. Collections by the customs dips in September. Data from the Treasury shows that the BOC collected 79.225 billion pesos last month. That's slightly lower than the 79.273 billion pesos collected in the same month in 2022, but still above customs target for this year. The agency's monthly collections have been lower year-on-year since June. Finance Chief Ben Jokno attributed this to easing oil prices and inclement weather. However, Jokno says he is not concerned about lower revenues as year-to-date collection remains on track. Collections in the January to September period stood at 660.7 billion pesos. That's nearly 2.6% above its 644.185 billion peso target. Bank lending growth slowed to its lowest level in nearly 2 years as high borrowing costs dampened demand for loans. Outstanding loans issued by big banks grew by 7.2% year-on-year in August. That translates to just over 11 trillion pesos, marking the fifth straight month that loan growth eased. It was also the slowest loan growth we're seeing in 20 months, or since the 4.8% recorded in December 2021. BSP's key policy rate remains at a near 16-year high of 6.25% since its March 23 meeting. And those are the top business stories of the hour. I'm Diego Castro. Join us again at 2 p.m. We are One News. All sides, all the time.